Hey everybody, welcome on into the Delmarva Sports Insider, the only live and local show dedicated to local sports. I'm Sports Director Brandon Bossert.
What's up? It's yours truly, sports anchor Devin J. Martin. We got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's just jump right into it, Brandon.
Yeah, this is our championship edition of DSI tonight for Cambridge South Dorchester. We've got a preview of tomorrow's big game all season. The Cambridge South Dorchester Vikings have shown us they're the #1 team in the Bayside Conference.
Yep.
Now they have a chance to prove they're the #1 team in the state of Maryland in the 1A.
Yeah, that's right, Brandon. It's their first time in the state finals championship game since 1996. That's
Incredible.
that's a Cowboy.
28 years.
You know, that reminds me of the Dallas Cowboys. That's, the last time they've not been out the, we don't have to get into that. We don't need to get into that. The Vikings, obviously, they took down Fort Hill in the state semifinal on Wednesday.
Right.
And now they got to prep for the matchup with Edmondson tomorrow. That's at the
tough.
Xfinity Center at 1 p.m. I mean, yeah, it's tough because, the Bayside champs, they're the champs of the Bayside, but Edmondson, they're a 3-time 1A state champ. And they've been to the championship game 6 times in the last 11 years.
Yeah, so they are the defending champions in 1A. So this is kind of a David and Goliath matchup. I mean, I don't know if CSD would characterize it that way.
No, they definitely don't look at it that way. But, that's how it is right now. So I went to the practice today to kind of check in on the team to see how they're viewing this matchup and how, where their mind is at going into this game tomorrow. One final practice here at Valhalla before the Vikings head to College Park for the 1A state championship. Including the Governor's Challenge, Cambridge South Dorchester has played in 25 games so far, going 23-2, and they've accomplished a lot this season. But nothing is as important as their matchup with Edmondson Westside for all of the marbles. Coach Sean Tucker says this season has gone according to plan.
4 goals was to win the Bayside North, win the Bayside Championship, and win our region. And final one is coming up. We got an opportunity for tomorrow is to win a state championship. And I felt that way from the very beginning. As I looked over and looked at all our pieces that we had every piece that we need to compete at the state level.
One of those pieces is LaShawn Moody, a big piece. The Easton transfer who quickly meshed with the team, leading the Vikings with fantastic all-around play, averaging 25 points, 6 boards, and 6 assists a night. And now, for his final high school game, he and his teammates are playing on the biggest stage.
It was always a goal, but when you actually doing it, it never feels real. It was our goal since day one to go to the state championship, go Bayside championship, and to win the North. So for us to actually have done it, it's been great. It feels different, something unbelievable.
Coach Tucker says their success this season starts on the defensive end.
They know that if they play defense and we get the ball back, that gives them an opportunity to score. So, and those guys, they genuinely get along, they like each other, and that's a big part of just, the guys got a good bond, as you can see them, they're always, hanging out together, laughing and goofing off, on the court and off the court, they love each other. So that's a big part of team chemistry, the kids actually getting along.
Anthony Hughes has won 3 regional titles in his 3 seasons with the Vikings. But he says this season feels a little different because now the whole shore is behind them.
I feel as though the whole shore is supporting us and making us feel better about ourselves, and they got our back. So we're gonna have our back by winning the game tomorrow.
Junior Kobe Enos, who scored his 1,000th career point in the state semifinal game against Fort Hill, says he feels the same way.
It means a lot for real because every game we rep the city, represent our school, and I'm glad to have the crowd behind us.
So, Brandon, when I talked to all of them, including the coach and some of the players, none of them were like, yeah, I know Edmondson, the Red Storm, they're going to be a tough test. They were all confident that they can bring the trophy home to the Eastern Shore.
Yeah, great job with that story tonight, Devin. We'll talk about later on what we think is going to happen and what CSD's chances are to win this game. Now, let's talk about Cambridge South Dorchester's opponents coming up tomorrow afternoon. 25-2 Edmondson Red Storm, the defending state champions. This team not only has experience, but they're led by youth. The leading scorer for Edmondson is a sophomore forward, Chase Foster, who averaged nearly 20 points and 11 rebounds a game. Junior guard Darnell Dantzler Jr. is a facilitator, 11 assists per game on the season as well. So they're a very well-rounded group over there.
And they're also really well coached as well. Their coach has been at their home for 16 years, been to 11 state titles in those 16 years. So, when you got a coach like that, you're definitely going to have greatness happen on the court.
And 3 state champions for him as well.
Yep, and right now the team is riding a 6 16-game winning streak. They've won the Baltimore City Championship. This is a hard-nosed team that's also led by a couple seniors. Josiah Brown is averaging a double-double. Brandon, they're really not messing around. They've won every game by at least 16 points in the tournament.
Yeah, they are not messing around. They're going out there. They're winning every game. They're winning them by big margins. So, Devin, what do you think the X factors are for this game? What does CSD have to do if they want to come out with a win?
So there's a couple of them. The first one, I'm going to start with a player specifically. I think the most important player you would think is LaShawn Moody, and he's been the leader. But Kobe Ennals, he's got the size. He's a second leading scorer, averaging 16 a game. He's 6'5", and he can shoot 37% from three.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Does everything.
He
plays
absolutely
in the post,
does.
Plays outside, makes threes, does everything.
But this team has a couple guys that are also 6'4", 6'5". So Kobe Ennals is going to be really important physically to match up with some of those guys. And if he can win that matchup, hold his own, or even win, the Vikings' chances go way up. As a team, this is where their defense has to step up. And now they've been great defensively all year, holding teams only 47 points a game. The Red Storm averaged 70. So if the Red Storm could put up around 70, I think the matchup is in their advantage. If the Vikings can hold them below 50, then I think the matchup is in the Vikings' advantage.
That might be a very tall ask for Cambridge to hold them.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do to win a championship.
Now, Cambridge has to play with that championship intensity
absolutely.
for all 32 minutes, because we've seen it throughout the season where you see Cambridge kind of play down to their competition's level, not really go out there as enthused for all 4 quarters, allow the other team to get back into it or have to come from behind and then come out with a fire under them. So in order to get the job done, LaShawn Moody is your go-to guy, obviously, averaging 25 points a game. When you need a bucket, you go to LaShawn Moody. Ennals can shoot from the outside.
Yes,
he can post up. He grabs boards, gets blocks on very disruptive on defense as well. But, you know, speaking of defense, I think defense is going to be the key to victory. Just like you said, they've got 5 guys who are very active in the passing lanes and get steals in every single matchup for this team. If they can play defense tough, yet disciplined. Got to stay disciplined when you play a team like this.
We really align on a lot of our points, but, you know, the intensity is the one thing that I agree with you wholeheartedly. They have a tendency of playing with their food, is what I like to say all season.
You won championships.
Yes, I did in high school, and the one thing that we did.
Right? 3-time state champion.
And my senior year, we were actually going for 5 straight, but we lost the state semifinals. But, you know, the way that they can win a championship, you got to play all 4 quarters. As you mentioned, there's been games where they play a good quarter, a good half, maybe a good 3 quarters. That's not going to cut it tomorrow.
Right.
They got to play at high intensity all 4 quarters. And as you mentioned, as soon as they bring that intensity, that's when you see the best version of them. And that's what they're going to have to play for the entire game if they want to have a chance to beat the Red Storm.
And that's what we want to see from Cambridge, is their best game coming up tomorrow. So does Cambridge bring home the title, and why? Tell us right now on our 47 ABC Sports social media pages. That's going to do it for the A block. We're calling our first time out, but when we come back, we're going to recap Dover's historic season. Don't go anywhere. That and more when Delmarva Sports Insider returns.
I'm Anthony Hughes from Cambridge, South Dorchester, and you're watching Delmarva Sports Insider.
Welcome back. Now let's talk about the other teams who are still competing this past week. We got to start up with the champs. The champs in Delaware.
We all knew Dover had the strongest team in the Henlopen Conference basically from the beginning of the season, but how would they stand up with those Newcastle County teams? You all know what I'm talking about, those upstaters who think that they own sports in Delaware, right? Coming from a Newcastle County
you know
myself.
and that rivalry with Salesianum is no joke between them and the Senators.
You know what? The Henlopen Conference is holding their own recently. It was no issue for the Senators, who defeated Middletown, then down Salesianum in the state championship game 56-53. Denham Perkins and Darrell Little were the driving forces once again, getting this victory on Saturday at the Bob Carpenter Center. The Sows held a lead early, but Dover fought back in this one.
Brandon, this might be the best game that I've been to since I've been working here. This game was crazy. Dover hung in the second half. Really
Look at
hung
Stephen Wilson. That's such a great shot.
It is a great shot. And you know who he can thank? He could thank his whole team for the way they played defensively, and he could thank Perkins and Little for what they did in the second half. They scored every single field goal in the second half. One of their teammates had a free throw. That was it. When they needed to get a bucket, Darrell Little and Denham Perkins came to play. And it was really a team effort defensively, as I said before as well. So I don't want to just focus on those two because they all played great defense, especially in the second half. Salesianum was getting whatever they wanted in the first half, and then I don't know what happened. They flipped the switch on defense, and they got a lot of stops, and they made a lot of buckets, and that's why they're the champs.
And Stephen Wilson, he deserves so much credit for this because he's gotten this team so close so many times.
Yep.
Championship game a couple years ago, COVID season, cut short in the Final Four in 2020. He finally gets his ring. All right, now what a year it's been for Darrell Little, who's been named the Player of the Year for the state of Delaware by Max Preps.
Oh, yeah, he deserves it.
He sure does. A 6'4" guard for the Senators, leading his team to a 23-2 record this season, power them to that first ever basketball championship in school history. Little filled up the stat sheet every night, 19.5 points, over 8 rebounds, 3 assists. He also had 2 steals per game, doing it on defense as well, shooting 47% from the field. So he was also productive. He was taking good shots all season as well.
And obviously coming over from Polytech, where he was a monster scorer there too for the Panthers as well. But this year, Little saved his best performance for last. 31 points, 9 boards, 2 steals in Dover's 3-point victory over Sally's. Brandon, I think if he missed any of the shots, if you take one field goal away from what he did in that game, if he only had 29 points, I think they would have lost. I know the math doesn't make sense in that way, but I think every single bucket that he got in that game was vital. Little will play his last high school basketball game in the Blue Gold All-Star game.
Yep, that's coming up this weekend. All right, now let's move on to the Decatur Seahawks, the 2 Bayside teams who went so far in this year's tournament. It truly was a season to remember for Bayside hoops this year.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with the Decatur Seahawks. They came into the season with very high expectations, and I said they'd met or even surpassed some of them. I mean, they did have a stacked roster, and they did their job this year.
They sure did.
Decatur Seahawks season did come to an end, though, in a very controversial fashion. Our sports photographer, Cole Howard, was at that game against St. Charles. Decatur lost by 2, but he says a lot of fouls were called that he didn't completely agree with, and I think a lot of Berlin natives don't agree with as well. But either way, it was a great effort from the Seahawks senior leaders, Kareem Bolden and Bryson Coleman. Bolden finished with 20 points, but the future, though, still remains bright for this squad because it includes juniors such as Davin Chandler, the Bayside player. We don't have to talk about that right now, but he's definitely one of the best players in the Bayside, and obviously tribe-wise as well. The Seahawks made it to the Final Four for the first time in 6 seasons, Brandon.
Yeah, truly dynamic team, and unfortunately, we have to talk about those foul calls that were made in the game. It's a tough way to end your season, but Bryson Coleman truly made his mark on this school's athletic department, both in football and basketball. Got his 1,000th point this year. This was his last game. And Kareem Bolden brought an energy and a fire to this team that they didn't have last year. Kareem Bolden was fantastic for this squad as well. They would not have gotten to this point without him.
No, absolutely not. He was someone that he came over and he meshed with the team very well, kind of blended in hand and glove fit. And I think they definitely are deserving of a state championship appearance. Now, for the Y High girls hoop team, it was an amazing season that ended a couple days ago as well. The Lady Tribe had been undefeated, the Bayside Conference champs, and a 2A East Region champs. I think they won the Bayside Conference for the first time since 1985, and they showed so much fight in this game in the state semifinals, trailing by 18 to Francis Scott Key. They cut that lead to just 5 before losing the fourth quarter by 13 points, and they would fall by 20. The Tribe should continue to contend next season, led by star sophomore Sayloff Foreman.
So I think one more time, let's just go ahead and give a round of applause for our Bayside teams, because we got 3 of them to the Final Four. That was a fantastic year.
Yes.
And we could see them back there again next year, because we've got some young talent on all 3 of these squads.
Yeah, and you see the elevation of the Bayside as a whole. Last year, we only had 1 team that made it to the Final Four, Y High on the boys' side. Now we have 3 and 1 in the actual state championship game. So
Fantastic.
things are definitely, the talent is rising here on the shore. Now, coming up, Chief Meteorologist Rich Wordsit will be back with a look at your weekend forecast.
And Slam Dunk to the Beach taking a hiatus. Keep it right here. You're watching DSI.
Sean Tucker, head boys basketball coach at Cambridge South Dorchester, and you're watching Delmarva Sports Insight.